I am telling you, Allah said, let the people of Gospel follow what Allah have revealed in it. That's the first one. The second one I show you, it says the hellfire will be for the people who's writing the Bible or writing the book with their hand and saying that's from Allah.
It's a conditional author.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, that's Allah saying you. That's the statement says that the angel is correct, and we believe it.
But you don't.
Listen.
You
Muslims,
contradict yourself.
No. We are not Muslims until we believe that there is Injil and there is Torah.
Where is the Injil now?
It has been corrupted.
How do you know that?
Because that's our religion says. And the Quran
That's
says
not what the Quran says.
It is the Quran says. It's in the whole context. If the context was, if the surah was speaking about the people who's with books, like Christian and Jewish, and after that he complete.
Yeah.
That's mean the context. It's following each other.
No, it doesn't. The context says exactly the opposite of what you're saying. Because Surah 48 says, to thee we sent the scripture, so that's to Muhammad, and he's talking about the Quran, in truth confirming the scripture that came before it and guarding it in safety, so judge between them by what Allah hath revealed.
So if you look at the context.
Listen. The next verse is the accusation that the Quran actually makes.
If you want to look to the context, look to the ayah before it.
Look. And follow not their vain desires, diverging from the truth that hath come to thee. So in other words, the Quran's accusing the Jews and the Christians of not following the Injil and the Torah.
Yes.
It's not accusing the Torah of the Injil of being changed.
If you want to look to the context, you don't look to the next verse. You
want to go back?
Verses before.
Yes.
Look to the 46.
Yeah, let's go to 46.
When a Muslim claims that the gospel has been corrupted, they are, in truth, contradicting the Qur'an itself, especially Surah Al-Ma'idah, verses 46 and 48. In both of these verses, the Qur'an uses a word of deep linguistic and theological significance, musaddiqan, which means to confirm, affirm, or validate. The word musaddiqan comes from the Arabic root sadd al-qaf, a root that speaks of honesty, reliability, and truth. It's the same root that gives us words like sidq, meaning truth, sadiq, meaning someone who is honest, and tasdiq, which means to affirm something as true. So when the Quran says that Jesus was given the gospel that is musaddiqan of the Torah, it means that the gospel affirms, upholds, and confirms the truth of the Torah that came before it. The gospel, therefore, was never meant to reject the Torah, but to continue the divine revelation in consistent unity. Likewise, in verse 48, Allah declares that He sent down the Quran to Muhammad as musaddiqan of the previous scriptures, including the gospel. This places the Quran not as a book of correction or cancellation, but as one of confirmation, a testimony to the truth that came before. And here lies the great tension that modern Muslim arguments cannot resolve. If the gospel had already been corrupted before Muhammad's time, then why would the Quran still describe it with the word musaddiqan? How does it make any sense to affirm something that is supposedly false? In classical Arabic, musaddiqan is never used to endorse something that is distorted or broken. You don't affirm a lie using a word whose root literally means truth. Even more seriously, if Muslims say that today's gospel is corrupted and cannot be relied upon, they are, perhaps unknowingly, accusing the Qur'an of misrepresenting the gospel in the 7th century. Because at the time these verses were revealed, Christians already had and were reading the gospel publicly. If that gospel was invalid, why would the Quran instruct Christians to judge by what Allah has revealed in it? Surah Al-Ma'idah 5:47. Would the all-knowing God command His people to follow a book that no longer reflects His truth? By rejecting the gospel as corrupted, Muslims are unintentionally undermining the Qur'an's own accuracy. They want the Qur'an to stand in judgment over previous scriptures, but they forget that the Qur'an grounds its own legitimacy in the truth of the very books it claims to affirm. If the Torah and the gospel are no longer valid, then the Qur'an's role as musaddiq, as one that confirms, has no ground to stand on. After all, how can you affirm something if the original is no longer there?
Yeah, let's read from 46.
Yeah, it says,
And in their footsteps we sent Jesus, the son of Mary, confirming
Yes.
the law that had come before him.
Yes.
So would you agree? Wait one second, I've got a
the
question.
context says, it says that Jesus has been sent with the Bible, and
With the
the Bible
angel.
with the angel, and he's confirming
The Torah.
The Torah.
Do you agree? Wait one second, I've got a question on that point. Do you agree that when it says that Jesus was confirming the Torah, that the Torah was valid at the time of Jesus?
If the book was not corrected and there is no wrong anything in it, why should Allah bring another book?
That's a great question.
This the book, like angel came,
Yeah.
because the Torah was corrected.
Can I answer that question?
Let
You've
me
answered
complete the point. Let me
Okay, complete the point and then I'll answer
Let me
your
complete the
question.
point. And after that, Quran came after the corruption of the angel. The angel was corrupted and was writing by hand. That's why the context is talking about this. So it's confirming the books before.
So let me address that point.
Confirming the book before, and after that it says in the same Quran, it says that those people who's writing the books in his hand and they're buying something for it.
Yeah.
That was the clear point that's before in telling that there he was corrected. So that's why the another revelation comes.
So let me address that point. Let me address that point. He asked the question, does it make sense for Allah to send another book unless the previous book has been corrupted? Well, Surah 48 answers that very question for him. So I'm not going to answer him. His own Quran is going to answer his question. And what does the Quran answer the question? No, I listen to you.
Okay.
Let me speak. Here's what the Quran says in answer to his question. It says, we prescribed a law and an open way. If Allah had so willed, he would have made you a single people, but his plan is to test you in what he hath given you, to strive as in a race in all virtues.
Yes.
So in other words, no, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. So the answer that the Quran gives is not that the Torah was corrupted, so we sent the Injil, and the Injil was corrupted, so we sent the Quran. No, the Quran's answer to his question is that to the Jews he gave the Torah, to the Christians he gave the Injil, and to the Muslims he gave the Quran, so that they could compete with one another in good works towards Allah. He set up a race according to the Quran. That isn't the same as saying that the previous revelations were corrupt. Now argue with your own Quran.
No, I'm not going to argue. This can say ummah. You say the word ummah in the Quran.
It says ummah. Yeah.
It's not saying one. It's not saying we made you a lot of religions. He said what if we want, we're gonna make you one ummah. One ummah it means that it may be one ummah on basically on races, on the type of race.
But the context here is revelation.
No, it's not.
It is.
It's talking about that. But
The context is revelation.
It's saying ummah.
Yes.
Ummah, that means he could make you one people.
Based on revelation.
Wait.
It's the context. You're ignoring the context.
It said maybe they're gonna be one ummah based on the land you're living in, maybe based on the religion, maybe based on the race,
Ethnicity.
yes, that's the
Nationality,
word. Yes,
language.
And exactly the same ayah in another surah. It says we could made you one ummah, but we made you difficult so you know each other. So it's not speaking about the other.
No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. You're perverting the words of Allah. He's literally doing what the Quran accuses Christians and Jews of doing. He's perverting his own book by his words.
5 words contradictory that in itself.
Because the context of the verse is, listen to the context. All the way through 48, it's talking about revelations. It's saying, to thee we sent the scripture in truth, confirming the scripture that came before you. We prescribed a law and an open way. So the context of what the ummah is based on is the revelation, and Allah is saying, we have not made you one ummah based on revelation, we've made you multiple ummahs based on multiple revelations so that you can compete in good works. So you're the one perverting the words of Allah.
No, I'm not
you
perverting.
are. Surah 2:85 applies to you.
When Muslims are faced with critical questions about Surah Al-Ma'idah, verses 46 and 48, especially the Qur'an's claim to confirm the gospel, they often don't address the heart of the matter directly. Instead, the conversation shifts to a different topic, such as the concept of ummah, or the idea of religious and cultural diversity. This is a common apologetic tactic. When theological pressure begins to expose a crack in the foundation, attention is redirected to something more abstract in order to avoid the core issue. But when we approach these verses honestly, grammatically, linguistically, and contextually, they are not speaking about ethnic or cultural variety. The Qur'an explicitly states that Allah gave the book to Muhammad as a musaddiq, a confirmer of the scriptures that came before. Not only that, the text says that Allah assigned each believing community a specific law and path. The phrase, ummatan wahida, one ummah, appears right in the middle of this discussion about revelation, law, and divine guidance. It's clear, then, that ummah in this context refers to a religious community under divine law, not a nation defined by race or geography. Muslims know that if they admit the Qur'an confirms the gospel, then they must also accept the gospel's authority during Muhammad's time. But the gospel's core message, especially the cross and the divinity of Christ, stands in direct opposition to the Quranic narrative. And this is where the real apologetic tension lies. On one hand, the Qur'an says it confirms the gospel. On the other hand, it denies the very heart of the gospel's message. When this contradiction is exposed in debate, many modern Muslims feel trapped. In response, they try to escape the tension by redefining terms, suggesting that ummah could mean anything, a cultural group, a tribe, even just a local identity. But that kind of semantic fog doesn't resolve the issue. It only proves that the Quranic reading is being forced to serve later doctrines rather than speaking for itself. If Allah revealed the Qur'an because the Torah and the Gospel were corrupted, the Qur'an would not describe itself as a musaddiq, a confirmer. It would describe itself as a corrector, a replacement, or even a rejection. But the Qur'an never uses those words. Instead, it says that the previous scriptures contain guidance and light, and that the people of the Gospel must judge by what God revealed in it. So when Muslims sidestep the meaning of musaddiqan and hide behind the broader concept of ummah, what they are really doing is avoiding theological accountability. They're not answering the contradiction, they're dodging it. And the task of Christian apologetics is to gently but firmly bring the focus back where it belongs. If the Qur'an truly confirms the gospel, then why does it contradict its core message? If it contradicts it, then it cannot confirm it. And if it doesn't confirm it, then it cannot claim to be the continuation of the same revelation. In the light of honest inquiry, there is only one message that stands true, unchanged and unwavering, from beginning to end: the gospel proclaimed by Jesus Christ. It does not replace the law and the prophets, it fulfills them. It does not deny what came before, it completes it. And it never claims to confirm something while rejecting its very heart. That kind of contradiction cannot be covered with flexible definitions of ummah or theological pluralism. Because in the end, truth is not determined by how many people follow it, but by whether it faithfully reflects the voice of the one who revealed it.
Now, answer me this question. Is there more than one party or just one party in a race?
Multiple parties.
Multiple parties. Are the parties here the ummahs?
Different religions.
Different religions. So we've got different religions with different revelations that should compete in a race. Agreed?
No.
Not compete.
Allah wants to make
He said
you one single
if
Muslim.
Allah wants.
Yes,
He
yes,
can do.
yes.
But except those in continue. Except here.
Yes, go on.
But go to but.
He but. Yes.
See but.
Go on. But his plan. No, you see, you're not listening. No, you see, you're the one who's maligned the context. Let's read it all again. Let's read it all again. Let's read it all again. He would have made a single people. So what is the conditional?
Okay, but no.
What is the conditional to the but? The conditional to the but, my friend, is that he could have made you one people. But there you go. He could have made you one people. But did you get that? He could have made you one people. But so that's the conditional. But what does he go on to say? But his plan is to test you in what he hath given you. So strive as in a race.
This is the answer.
And in a race, is there more than one party? or just one party?
Different parties.
Different parties. And in the context of this passage, who are the different parties?
Jews, Christian, Muslims.
Thank you very much. Jews, Christians, Muslims.
Yes, exactly.
So Jews, Christians, Muslims all have a different revelation that they're supposed to live by.
That's why he
Correct?
said. That's why.
Correct.
That's
You
why-
disagree?
That's why he said in the context, let them believe and follow what Allah have revealed
Yes.
in the angel.
And does it make sense to command them to follow a book that can't be followed because it's corrupted?
It's saying that this book has
Answer
something
the question.
from Allah, and the other thing
And
is being corrupted.
So does it make sense to tell people to follow a book that's been corrupted?
It's the opposite way, my friend.
Yeah, but your brother, this is not-
Answer
it's
the
not-
question.
It's exactly the same. Follow what Allah have revealed.
I'm going to give you
not
one
what
more
you
chance.
write it.
Does it
What
make
have you
sense
write it?
to follow a book that's been corrupted? What do you think?
It's not. It's not.
It's not. What do you
true.
think?
As well.
It's not. What do you think?
The New Testament's corrupted.
Right. So basically, they've just said. So what they've just said, 1, 2, 3, have all just said, Allah's commands make no sense. That's exactly why. Why? Because Allah commands me to do something that they say I can't do.
You are preaching.
When Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 48 says, "If Allah had willed, He would have made you one ummah," this isn't just a rhetorical flourish. It's a theologically loaded conditional statement. It is an explicit admission in the Qur'an that uniting all of humanity under a single community of faith was entirely within God's power. He could have done it, but He chose not to. Instead of gathering everyone under one system of divine law, God intentionally gave each community its own path and legal framework, and called that difference a test. If Allah did not will for all people to be one ummah, then the command for all of humanity to follow one system, namely Islam, becomes incoherent. The Qur'an itself acknowledges that the diversity of religious laws was God's design, not the result of human failure. Yet Islam simultaneously claims that the Qur'an is the final, universal revelation, the only valid one, because the previous scriptures were supposedly corrupted. But this raises a fundamental question. How could God test humanity using revelations that are no longer trustworthy? And why would He command the people of the gospel to judge by the gospel, as in verse 47, if the gospel was already invalid? This is why the conditional structure in this verse matters so deeply. The phrase, "if Allah had willed," reveals that the lack of a single ummah is not the result of human rebellion, but the direct consequence of God's own choice. So how can Muslims claim that the Qur'an came to unify all people under one system, when the same verse admits that God never intended to do that? Even more puzzling, if God Himself did not will the formation of a single ummah, why does He then give commands as though that unified system had already been established? It's like someone saying, "I could open the door for you, but I've deliberately chosen to keep it shut. Now go ahead and walk through it." The command directly contradicts the choice. And in the context of the Qur'an, this isn't a metaphor. It's a matter of salvation, of divine revelation, and of how humanity is meant to respond to the will of God. From this understanding, the Islamic position begins to unravel. If the Qur'an affirms the previous scriptures yet rejects their core theological truths, it is contradicting itself. If it commands humanity to follow a unified path while admitting that God Himself did not intend to unify them, then the command has no stable foundation. And if that foundation is missing, if it lacks a consistent divine intent, then it is not the command of a true and trustworthy God, but a product of theological inconsistency. Our Christian apologist Bob doesn't need to invent new attacks. He simply needs to read the Qur'an as it is, on its own terms. Because even in this one verse, the text already reveals that the Qur'an issues commands that are not supported by God's own declared will, and true revelation never commands what God has deliberately chosen not to establish. This is the very point where the Islamic worldview exposes its own weakness. While the gospel continues to stand firm as the only revelation that never contradicts itself, never commands what it withholds, and never turns contradiction into a divine test.